In the peaceful English village of King's Abbot, the mysterious death of a wealthy widow, Mrs. Ferrers, sends ripples through the community. Known for being reclusive and burdened by whispers of having poisoned her abusive, alcoholic husband a year earlier, Mrs. Ferrers is found dead from an overdose of veronal, a sleeping medication. The townsfolk speculate that guilt and blackmail drove her to suicide. Dr. James Shepherd, a local physician, becomes deeply involved in the aftermath of this event. The very night of Mrs. Ferrers' death, he is invited to dinner at Fernley Park, the grand home of Roger Ackroyd, the wealthiest man in the village and Mrs. Ferrers' close companion. Ackroyd, visibly troubled, reveals to Dr. Shepherd that Mrs. Ferrers had indeed poisoned her husband and was being blackmailed. She had confessed everything to Ackroyd in a letter before her death, disclosing the blackmailer's identity. Just as Ackroyd begins to read the letter aloud, they are interrupted by Parker, Ackroyd's butler, with the evening mail. Ackroyd refrains from revealing the blackmailer's name in front of Dr. Shepherd, who then leaves for home. Later that night, Dr. Shepherd receives a frantic call from Parker, claiming Ackroyd has been murdered. Rushing back to Fernley Park, Dr. Shepherd finds Parker denying the call, but they discover Ackroyd dead in his locked study. The scene is mysterious. The room is locked from the inside, and a chair is oddly positioned. The next day, Flora Ackroyd, Roger's niece, beseeches Dr. Shepherd to enlist the help of their new neighbor, the renowned retired Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. Flora is desperate, fearing that her fiancé, Ralph Patten, who has disappeared, will be accused of the murder. Ralph's shoes are found near the crime scene, and he was seen at Fernley Park the night of the murder. Poirot, renowned for his meticulous and logical approach, agrees to take on the case, promising to uncover the truth. Poirot's investigation reveals that nearly everyone in Ackroyd's household harbors secrets. Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd, Roger's sister-in-law, and Geoffrey Raymond, his secretary, admit to being in debt. Poirot uncovers that Parker, the butler, had a history of blackmailing his former employer and was snooping around for more opportunities at Fernley Park. Miss Russell, the efficient and somewhat intimidating housekeeper, confesses to having an illegitimate son, Charles Kent, who was seen near the estate on the night of the murder. Poirot's methodical approach uncovers several crucial clues: a goose quill and a piece of cambric in the summer house, and a wedding ring inscribed from R in a goldfish pond. He gathers everyone together, accusing them of hiding important information. Flora confesses she lied about wishing her uncle good night to cover up that she was stealing money from his bedroom. Miss Russell reveals her son's identity and his addiction issues, but insists he is not the murderer. The investigation becomes more complex as Poirot discovers that Ralph Patten had secretly married Ursula Bourne, a maid at Fernley Park. Ursula, born into a higher social class but forced to work due to her family's financial decline, had argued with Ralph the night of the murder over his engagement to Flora. Ralph, frustrated, wandered around aimlessly after their argument, providing no alibi. Poirot cleverly uses a fake newspaper announcement claiming Ralph's capture to draw Ursula out. She admits to the secret marriage and the fight, but maintains Ralph's innocence. Poirot deduces that Ackroyd had purchased a dictaphone to record conversations, which was the voice Raymond and Blunt heard at 9:30 p.m., not Ackroyd speaking to someone. In a dramatic revelation, Poirot gathers all the suspects and presents his findings. He explains that Dr. Shepherd, the seemingly benign narrator, is the real murderer. Shepherd had killed Ackroyd to protect his secret of blackmailing Mrs. Ferrers. On the night of the murder, Shepherd stabbed Ackroyd, set the dictaphone to create a false alibi, and planted Ralph's shoes in the mud to frame him. He then hid Ralph in a local asylum under the pretense of treating a patient. Poirot's meticulous method and logical approach bring the truth to light. Dr. Shepherd, realizing he cannot escape, prepares to take his own life with an overdose of veronal, mirroring Mrs. Ferrers' tragic end. His final act is a desperate attempt to spare his sister Caroline from the scandal of his exposure. Character analysis. Dr. James Shepherd, the narrator and local physician, Dr. Shepherd is initially perceived as trustworthy and straightforward. However, he is ultimately revealed to be the cunning murderer, driven by greed and fear of exposure. Caroline Shepherd, Dr. Shepherd's older sister, Caroline, is a sharp, gossiping spinster who gathers information through a network of servants. Her character is later said to have inspired Agatha Christie's famous detective, Miss Marple. Hercule Poirot, the famous Belgian detective, Poirot is known for his brilliant deductive skills and methodical approach. He systematically uncovers the truth behind Ackroyd's murder. Mrs. Ferrers, though deceased at the novel's start, Mrs. Ferrers plays a crucial role in the plot. Her guilt over poisoning her husband and subsequent blackmail lead to her suicide, which sets the story in motion. Roger Ackroyd, the wealthy victim, Ackroyd is a respected businessman whose murder forms the central mystery. His upright nature and adherence to societal rules make his death all the more shocking. Ralph Patten, Ackroyd's stepson, Ralph is charming but financially irresponsible. His secret marriage to Ursula Bourne and disappearance make him a prime suspect. Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd, Roger's sister-in-law, Mrs. Ackroyd, and her daughter Flora live at Fernley Park. She is prone to dramatics and financial struggles. Flora Ackroyd, Flora, Roger's niece, is beautiful and financially dependent on her uncle. Her engagement to Ralph is more a bid for independence than love. Geoffrey Raymond, Ackroyd's secretary, Raymond is laid back and confident despite his debts. His demeanor remains calm throughout the investigation. Major Blunt, a taciturn big-game hunter, Blunt harbors a secret love for Flora, which is revealed during the investigation. Miss Russell, the efficient housekeeper, Miss Russell, is a woman of few words. Her secret son, Charles Kent, complicates the investigation. Parker, Ackroyd's butler, Parker, has a history of blackmail. Although greedy, he is not deemed courageous enough to commit murder. Ursula Bourne, a parlour maid born into a higher social class, Ursula secretly marries Ralph. Her hidden marriage and argument with Ralph on the night of the murder are pivotal. Charles Kent, Miss Russell's son, Kent is an addict with a troubled past. His presence near the estate on the night of the murder raises suspicions. Inspector Raglan, the main inspector on the case, Raglan quickly suspects Ralph but is eventually outmaneuvered by Poirot's superior investigative skills. Colonel Melrose, initially reluctant to believe in Ralph's guilt, Melrose's faith wavers as evidence mounts against Ralph. Themes: triumph of good and restoration of order. The novel concludes with the restoration of order as Poirot unravels the mystery, ensuring justice prevails. Murder of manners. The story is set in a polite, civilized society where even murder does not disrupt the veneer of civility. Characters maintain decorum, highlighting the contrast between their manners and the dark secrets they harbor. Nature versus nurture. The novel suggests that a combination of a weak character and circumstantial pressure leads to criminal behavior. Dr. Shepard's actions are depicted as the result of his inherent weakness and desperate circumstances. Danger of secrets. Almost every character harbors secrets that complicate the investigation. These secrets, whether related to the murder or not, create a web of deception and misunderstanding. Power of method and logic. Poirot's success lies in his methodical, logical approach. He dissects every clue and carefully constructs the truth, showcasing the triumph of reason over chaos. Danger of assumption. The novel warns against the danger of making assumptions. Characters often make erroneous assumptions about each other, and the reader is misled by trusting the narrator, Dr. Shepard. The revelation of Shepard as the murderer underscores the perils of assumption. The novel masterfully weaves together these elements, culminating in one of the most famous plot twists in literary history. Poirot's methodical approach and the intricate web of secrets and lies create a compelling narrative that keeps readers guessing until the very end.